markets session. So I thought about what can I do. So I told the chairman, well, I'll talk about international marketing in emerging markets, but I'll focus on some do's and don'ts in more methodological flavor, because that's quite a bit of my research has a methods background. So then I started with a title, and initially I had like 5 do's and don'ts, and then I had 10, and then I thought, well, maybe I'll change my slides over and over again and just put some do's and don'ts, and then if I change last minute, then I'll be safe. So my name is Tammo Bijmolt from the Netherlands University of Groningen. So here's number 1. And this has been discussed quite a few times. Early this morning, and also in the introduction. I'm also a research director, sort of advising research at our school. So I have to read a lot of proposals at the University of Groningen of people who want to do a PhD project. And on our school there's a lot of people from Iran and Indonesia and all over the world that come with a scholarship from their own government or something like that and want to do a PhD in our school. And oftentimes they write a proposal like we want to study this something affecting something else, and we do this in Bangladesh or Indonesia or whatever. And so I always ask, so why is this relevant? Why do you want to do it in another context? So how is this different? And I think that's really what I see over the last few days here. I'm really impressed because I think the situation is quite different here. Here it's much more like India is different, emerging countries is different, and that generates other problems. And we're not going to study specific problems specifically to India, but because the market context is different, consumers behave different, firms behave different, or whatever. So there's a specific issue, and this is what we're going to study. And then earlier this morning, there was a really wonderful example in the modeling track. Like, okay, although this is the case is based on India, Professor Sudhir made a really strong case, like, okay, but this is a general scientific problem. It's a general issue. I'm not so, of course I'm interested in the India situation, but the way I formulate my research, the way I write my paper and all that, it's about the general scientific questions that I have. So that's why I want to stress with emerging markets, etc. It may generate specific questions, etc., but it's not about a specific case. I oftentimes tell my own students and people who do a PhD at our school, I always take it as a really bad signal. Hopefully, I'm not. If your country is in the title of your paper, that's always like, okay, why should be the country? Of course, there can be occasions where it does make sense, but generally, to me, it's not a good signal that the name of the country is in the title of the paper. Can be, of course. I'm not saying that's always the case, but so typically the research on the industry or something typically is not a good signal if the industry of the country is in the title of the paper. So, what's I going to say about it? So, for example, we have now a research project with a sponsorship actually of a major sponsor of sports events in Europe, and we have really interesting data about what's the effect of the sponsorship actually of the soccer league within Europe. So the Champions League in Europe, which is broadcasted internationally. So how is this affecting? What is the effect of brand or of brand equity and stuff like that in different countries? So what's the effect in an international marketing context of sponsorship in one area of the world on worldwide? So you have to look in like, okay, I do this study, and there's a reason why I have this international perspective, or this emerging marketing perspective, whatever. It's fundamental. It's a fundamental issue within the project itself. It's not someone studied this in typically America. I want to study this in the Netherlands or India or Indonesia or whatever. That's not the reason in itself. So, bit like what Fikomar I think said on Sunday also, you have to make sure the research is relevant, interesting, exciting, and of course rigorous. That's when the business of consulting or some other type of research, they want to do serious academic research. So this is actually, I really like this 10-minute speed dating, although it was quite tense, so I was glad I wasn't breaking between this session and the 10 minutes. feeding. I always ask my students the following thing. A good research project, like PhD or any other project, should be like a joke. And what do I mean with that? You have, well, yeah, let's do it like this. I have a young daughter. She's not so young anymore, but when she was younger, she came to me and she said, "Dad, I know a joke." And then she told me a story with a couple of lines, and then she stopped, and then it was like how it wasn't funny, right? So the young child can tell a story as if it is a joke, and then just stop. So that's what I mean with a good research project must be like a joke. In the end, it must be sort of funny. It must be interesting. So in the 10 minutes meetings that we just had, some students also told us, like, I want to study this and this and this, and then it's like a joke of a child. And he said, like, yeah, okay. So when I don't give a laugh. It's not like generating a laugh or something like that. So why is it interesting? So what? Right? So that's why I like, yeah, good research is like it. Of course, it's not really funny, but it is relevant, interesting, etc. So it's like an elevator pitch kind of thing. You have to be able to describe your research project in just a couple of minutes, a couple of lines. People always thought like brand equity is driven by this and this and this, but it's kind of weird because I have a theory that could be the opposite, namely in this circumstance it could be the opposite effect, and this is what I want to show. Yeah, could be. Let me see your data, let me see your results, so what happened? So just a few lines, and people say, well, oh yeah, that's counterintuitive or opposite to literature, all those things. So in that sense, yeah, your research must be all like this, but yeah, you should be prepared to tell your research as a joke. And jokes are not extremely long and technical, and like if you need to know certain words to understand a joke, and it doesn't take like 10 minutes to tell the joke and all those things. Jokes are pretty short, and you have to be able to tell it to a lot of people. So your research project or your paper must be like that. So also good if you submit your paper to a journal, also like, that's how the abstract should read. Yeah, this is a bit of a debate that you may have, assuming that a lot of the PhD students do aim to play the international game of being on the international job market in a few years, at least publish in the international journals, etc. Yeah, then you conduct your research in a way that it fits with these kind of journals. So with these kind of theory, with these kind of data, with these kind of methods, using the literature from those journals, so try to cite, not exclusively, but quite extensively at least, these journals, and not so much too much lower tier journals. Of course, occasionally it can be correct, but yeah. And of course, if you read it's in international marketing, etc. So if you focus on those, you can of course go to international marketing or JIPS, or if you're into consumer behavior, you can go to a journal of consumer psychology or other really well-known fair journals. I always tell my PhD students, at least in Groningen, typically the PhD projects consist of three. The PhD concepts consist of 3 projects, and I also for time reasons, but also sort of to motivate them, I typically have them start as soon as possible with the first project. Typically with a project that I already plan to do anyhow, some data that I have, it could be interesting. So sort of let them learn the trick. What is it to write an introduction? What is it to do the statistics, etc. And also, it's much easier to read the literature with a purpose in mind, right? You're writing a paper, you're studying data, you're doing a project, and then it's much easier to read the literature than just read the literature because you want to do a PhD. And you learn about the review process, like you have to get adjusted to getting rejections, or if you get a revision, how to write reply notes, all those things. All this part of the game of getting your papers into those kind of journals. So in our school, typically people do 3 projects, and yeah, the first 1 or 2 are typically in the review process, or maybe even accepted by the time people finish. And the last one is typically, yeah, basically about to be submitted, and when people finish their PhD, go to some other school and then write up their final paper for journal submission. and it typically helps to team up with someone who knows the tricks. But if you want to publish in those kind of journals, yeah, you have to find it all out yourself. No one in your team is doing that. And on these things, then it's quite difficult, if not impossible. When we met yesterday, you also said that the difference in India is bigger than in Europe. There's well-known research in scaling, etc., that people always think that their own neighborhood is way more different than the other side of these nice maps of the US. The area where people live is much bigger than the other side of the coast, the other side of the country. So I personally tend to think that Dutch people and Greek people are way more different than different people in India. And let's not discuss who is right. I think I am, you think you're right. I would say it's interesting to study the general phenomena like how much are people different within and across regions. Our countries or whatever geographical aspect you're looking at. Because it's typically interesting, not only to look differences across countries, but also within countries and how are similar groups, maybe similar, some groups here in India are similar to other groups in other countries. More so than other people in India. So this morning already Peter who also suggested that you can do things like multi-level regression. Actually I have a paper in IJLM. I will not promote my own research too much. There's a paper on multi-level linked class modeling where you can really nicely look at these final marks. I can have a quick picture. This describes what we're doing actually. So traditional clustering or class modeling, you will look at one country. Right? So this is your sample from one country, and you make, so in this case there's 4 different types of people. So this pie says India, and there's a lot of type 1 persons and quite a few type 2 persons, etc. As another country with another distribution of the 4 segments, etc. And in total we have up to 85 different countries. Now this model that we use, there's 2 things, namely it generates this segmentation, this clustering at the country level, but it also says, okay, well there's actually 2 types of countries, namely there's country type, which reflects A, B, and C, where group 1 and 2 is pretty big, and there's another type of country where 2 and 3 are really quite big. So you can look at like the within and between variation, how big are these segments, and you can get a classification of the individuals and of the countries. So you could say like, oh, maybe India is like, well maybe it may not have to be on the safe side. The Netherlands is similar to Germany, because in the Netherlands and Germany you have a lot of type 2 and type 3 persons. And in India there's not so many type 3 persons. So India is another group of countries. And these kind of methods work pretty smooth. It is available in software packages. So in this case you don't have to do your own modeling. How am I doing time-wise? Another 7 minutes. When I was a PhD student, my supervisor told me main effects are not really interesting. That something has an effect on something else. That's typically that can be hypothesis 1 maybe in a paper, but generally the main effects are pretty boring. So if you increase price, sales goes down. If you do more advertising, sales go up. And a lot of these main effects in marketing are pretty boring. Especially in a lab setting, that's basically you can find a main effect by just playing around with how big is the treatment. Right? You can get rid of, or you can get, well, at least if the effect is not really zero, if there's really no effect, you can do whatever you like. But if the effect is pretty small, you can make the treatment bigger or smaller and get a significant difference. What is typically more interesting is like, okay, when is this effect bigger or smaller? How is it different across countries or across individuals or whatever? But I would say, especially in these kind of topics, I also saw this in these 10 minutes meetings that I had. A lot of people say, yeah, but I want to study this. But what is the underlying process? Do I really understand what is the mechanism behind it? What is the intermediate steps? How come certain things happen in India different than in another country? So what is driving it. So what part of the behavior is different, what kind of decisions do people make different, what's the underlying mechanism. So then of course it comes to looking at mediation, not only at moderation, not only at maintenance. So if you want to do a PhD and get your paper published, I would certainly, if you can, try to have a look at mediation. Try to get into the process, what's happening. Why are certain treatments more effective here than elsewhere? It's kind of nice because quite a few people discussed things that I had on my slides also, so I plug it in again. This has been discussed yesterday. I see someone raised the question, I cannot get these data because at least in the kind of modeling that I do, having access to data is really critical. So major importance. So you want to have, if you want to have this international kind of studies, you need someone who collected the data already. If you want to do this in your PhD or maybe as a scientific researcher in general, you don't have the time or the money or somewhere, you don't have the opportunity to collect this kind of data. So you need some market research agency, you need some firm or some customer, someone who collected this data. And hopefully the same variables across many countries, or at least, and hopefully also over pretty long period of time. So what I typically do is I try to stay in contact with my former master students, if they have interesting positions all around the world, and also in the Netherlands of course, and they work at market research agency and especially nowadays with LinkedIn and stuff like that, it's quite easy. So you try to trace them down and so what do they do? Also because you're interested in them, in the person, but also because you're interested in, maybe they sit on real nice data. And oftentimes someone said like, firms are not so willing to share the data. At least my experience is quite the opposite. A lot of firms are. A lot of these market research agencies, at least in the Netherlands, they developed a tool to do say, customer satisfaction research. And they do this over and over and over and over again for hundreds of companies for years. And quite often they save the data, even the raw data, but they just somewhere, they never did anything. And then you go like, can I use this data? And in return, you offer them a short report that they can claim, actually, some professor from the university looked at our tool, it's really, they can show that like, that has been used in academic research, good for them, feel free, as long as they don't lie about what I found, etc. That's fine. And I'm willing to give them a workshop of say half a day about the things that I found. I'm even willing to help them improving their customer satisfaction tool, as long as they give me this 200 times over 10 years that they actually apply this thing for 1,000 customers each, so they give me a massive amount of data. And for them, they have to invest a bit of time, but not so much. And I get an awful lot of data. So, okay, occasionally they say no, but I know you also there's plenty of projects you can do, so you do another project. So I would say just contact these people or have your supervisor contact them. Maybe that's a more successful strategy. But I would say that firms or research agencies are not willing to participate and share their data unless it's really dramatically different here, but at least in Europe and in the Netherlands they're quite willing to. So for example, we have some people from Spain, Ana Torres and Sheth, they're both from Spain. And we have a study where we had a really a research consultancy firm. They had a tool to measure corporate social responsibility, and they did this for quite a couple of years for major brands, but they didn't measure they didn't measure brand equity. But there's brand equity measures available, right? So we merged the two databases about all they did about corporate social responsibility and the databases that we provided about brand equity and over time across countries for many brands, and you're halfway getting your paper in. Because there's not so many people have those kind of data about corporate responsibility and brand equity. So of course you need to do the analysis in the right way, you have to write a theory, you have to write a nice positioning of the paper, etc. But having access to those kind of data, that's really important. So yeah, that's so that's one of the things that I do. Is that suppose I'm interested in the effective promotions, and I see a market research agency. A lot of these research agencies have a tool how to test for promotions. And it's like, oh, we are so experienced, we do this already for years, and then we go, oh, okay, we do this already for years. That's interesting. So yeah, then it helps, of course, if you're a full professor and you contact them and maybe they know you from some interview or whatever. That's all. If you really cannot get data, one other option that you can do is, for those who are interested in these kind of stuff, there's something called meta-analysis. I've done some of these studies also myself. So what's this basically? So if you look at the studies that have been published in the literature, or maybe are available but not have been published, say working papers online, those kind of stuff. And if these studies have been done in different countries, what you can do is, instead of analyzing your own new data, you can also say, okay, but if some people looked at it at some effect of X or Y, say corporate social responsibility on brand equity in different countries by different studies, maybe I can summarize the literature. Instead of having my own data, I can use not their data, but I can use their results and statistically summarizing the results from existing studies. So you can generate new knowledge by analyzing the results in a different way. And that is called meta-analysis, and I've done a few studies on that also. For example, about price elasticity, and one of the things that we do is like, okay, is price elasticity different in different countries? We also look like, is price elasticity different for private label versus manufacturer brands? Is it different if you look at time aggregation, if you have weekly data, yearly data, and all these things? A lot of other effects, but we also look at country. But here's a big limitation. Not only in this respect, but meta-analysis, if you analyze the literature, you're of course bounded to what is available. If everyone only studied price elasticities in the US and in Europe, this will not work for you if you want to study how it is in Asia. Right? So you're of course limited to those things that you can find. But if you're, in principle, this kind of quantitative literature, I always tell my students, doing something like this might be a good way to learn the literature, which you have to do in your PhD anyhow, typically. So this could be a first project for a PhD, do a meta-analysis on a certain topic. It's a lot of work, but the chance of getting it accepted is quite reasonable, and the potential contribution is quite big. You mentioned there's like 100 studies on the topic. What's the sense of doing study 101? It's maybe, I think it's more valuable to summarize the 100 in a sophisticated way than add just one more. So on a lot of topics, it makes more sense to do a meta-analysis than to do, again, another study on the effect of promotions on sales, or any other topic. Okay, final slide. Something that I was missing so far. First of all, a lot of things that I've heard, maybe not my own suggestions, but a lot of things that I've heard the last couple of days are really good suggestions. So my final advice is please take the suggestions that you've heard so far, also all the others, take them really serious. Because if you want to make it into an international academic world, in marketing, I think a lot of the advice that I've seen in the last couple of days make a lot of sense. Like how to get things published, how to design new research, how to do modeling, a lot of these things. Like these are a lot, it's not relevant for me. If you fought that a couple of times, you're missing the point. So maybe it's obvious, but I think the things that have been said in the last couple of days are really good advice, so please take it serious. But okay, you have to work hard. Being smart is helpful. But making more office hours, doing analysis over and over again, writing your introduction over and over again, and you submit it, you get a nice review, you have to do 50% at least again. So getting a PhD, getting your papers published is really hard labor. It makes But of course you must enjoy what you're doing. If you don't enjoy what you're doing, you should seriously consider doing something. So this is something that I personally think a bit like it must be fun, right? You must like the puzzle that you're trying to solve. So you must enjoy what you're doing. So hopefully that is the case, and if that is the case, then congratulations and enjoy your